Selamat siang. Welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update, and this is January 2nd, 2022. Got that right. And Happy New Year. I hope you had a good one. It was very, very quiet here in North Bali, well, up in Singaraja anyway. It's been pretty quiet since Wednesday's update. Saw a lot of rain on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and here it is hot right now. It is 32.8 degrees Celsius, and wind speed is 1.4 meters per second. My new toy, my little wind speed thing, what's called an anemometer, something like that, using this to check and see when it's safe to fly my drone. So let's get right into it. What about the numbers? The numbers continue to look good. The 7-day average for new positive cases holding steady at 4, and the 7-day average for deaths holding steady at 0.4. So good news there. And what about yesterday nationwide? Positive cases 274, and deaths only 2. Only 2, great. What about testing in Indonesia? Yesterday, 128,197 tests with 0.21% positive rate. Positive rate's gone up a little bit. And the 7-day simple average positivity rate is 0.13%. Okay, so not bad, not bad. And Bali testing, 38,532 people over the last 7 days up to December 31st. 7-day positivity rate, 0.08%. Okay. And what about those vaccination numbers? Vaccination numbers for yesterday. First dose, 3,494,185, 78.2% of the population. And second dose, 3,102,776, 69.5% of the population. And yesterday, being a holiday, not much was being done. 175 additional doses were administered yesterday. Okay, I'm surprised there was any. And what about the numbers in Bali yesterday? Numbers 3, and recorded deaths 0. Okay, that's a 3 and a 0. And active cases in Bali 62. So looking good. The numbers are looking good. I'm starting something new today. I'm picking a story that I consider the lead story, the one most interesting to me anyway. And we're going to have that first and then go into my regular routine. So the first story is about the number of foreigners that have been kicked out of Bali this year. What is the big story this week? 194 foreigners kicked out of Bali throughout 2021. Almost 200 foreigners were kicked out for being naughty this year. What were they being kicked out for? Well, a variety of things. Some related to the health protocol, some overstaying their visas, on and on. The article doesn't really list all of the things. It does note that out of the 194, 71 people were processed at the immigration office in Ngurah Rai. 38 were processed in the immigration office in Denpasar. 17 in Singaraja, our office here. And then 68 people in the immigration center in Denpasar. They came from a variety of countries, the usual places: the US, Russia, Czech Republic, Ukraine, etc., etc. According to the Bali Province Justice and Human Rights Office head Jamaruli Manahuru, who I've mentioned many times, of the deportees, 7 were sent home for repeatedly ignoring health protocols, including 2 Russians who refused to mask up in public. These people have been reprimanded and warned, and yet they repeated their offenses, he said. There was even one who lied to officers by pretending to wear a mask when she actually wasn't. You know that story. That had to be the most bizarre story of 2021. Out of all the bizarre stuff that foreigners in Bali did, maybe that's the most bizarre. The woman who painted the mask on her face, that's what he's talking about. He concluded, this is Indonesia. No foreigners playing around here. If we are not firm, there will be many problems. The rules must be strictly enforced. And so that's it. And there was a warning just a few days before New Year's Eve for foreigners that if you don't follow the rules, you're going to be deported. Well, I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet about that. Okay, so if you're a foreigner here and you're not obeying the rules, you may be kicked out. So that's immigration's warning. Play by the rules. And what about Omicron in Bali? Omicron reached its 136 cases. Government calls on public to refrain from traveling abroad. Once again, okay, so there were 68 new cases yesterday, bringing the total up to 136 nationwide. And according to the Health Ministry spokesperson, Ubud, all the cases were international travelers, and 11 of them are Indonesian citizens. She said the majority of international travelers arriving came from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, and the US. And the government has asked people not to travel to those places, but people are going anyway. And Ubud mentioned, yes, the Omicron variant has a high transmissibility rate, but a lower rate of severe illness nonetheless. People should be aware of the situation and that it may change quickly, and therefore control and prevention as well as other mitigating measures must continue. And she said, don't be selfish. Okay, we're getting more serious about this. We have to refrain from traveling to countries with high transmission rates of COVID-19, such as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the UAE, and the United States, but people are going anyway. She said, we have to work together to protect our loved ones from contracting COVID-19. And what about the Omicron variant in Indonesia? Omicron government says impossible to ban entry of international travelers. And so according to the spokesperson for the health ministry, Siti Nadia Tarmizi, she said, we can't close the borders. We've got to let people in because most of the people that are coming in are Indonesian citizens, and we can't block them. So she said the other day that their government has no plans to completely close the country's entrance borders, either by land, sea, or air. And she said the government has no plans to add any new countries onto their list of countries that are banned to enter Indonesia. However, she did say that they're studying it. So if you want to come into Indonesia on a business visa, you can still do that, still open. And some more on borders. Indonesia to tighten borders in Batam following fake PCR test findings. Oh, man. So a fake PCR test was found by an Indonesian migrant worker coming back from Malaysia through Batam. Batam's one of the entry points reopened by the Indonesian government during the pandemic. And on the daily average, there's 250 visitors from Singapore and Malaysia that come through Batam. And get this, the COVID-19 task force person, Pak Wiku, who I've talked about before, said that there were 353 confirmed positive cases coming through there in December. He said this number increased twice-fold, more than 168 compared to November. Most of the cases showed positive results on the second PCR test. And he said this shows that the 10-day quarantine is effective in preventing further transmissions of the virus. I don't see the quarantine being reduced anytime in the near future. Vaccines and vaccinations. More good news on this front. 12 million Astrazeneca vaccine doses arrive in Indonesia. These 12 million doses were procured through direct purchase, and once they arrived, they were going to be immediately sent to the areas in need, and there are certainly large parts of Indonesia that still need to get vaccinated. Government data shows as of Tuesday that Indonesia had administered first coronavirus dose to 157,804,805 people, and 111,565,302 people have had their second dose. And according to this article, 1,284,589 people have already gotten their third dose. So I'm assuming those are health workers. Okay, so good news on the vaccine and vaccination front. We're getting things in here, getting enough vaccines so that people can be taken care of quickly. More on vaccines and vaccination. Indonesia to get Merck Pfizer COVID-19 antiviral pills anticipates Omicron surge at the end of January. And so Indonesia is going to get its first shipment of the antiviral pills, Molnupiravir, made by Merck, and Paxlovid by Pfizer next month. That's in January. Well, it's this month, actually, according to the health minister, Pak Budi. And he said the country continues to intensify its efforts to combat the spread of the Omicron variant. The government's filed a request with BPOM, the Indonesian equivalent of the FDA in the United States, to issue emergency use authorization for these two pills, and they should be released to the market, as I said, in January, right now. But Minister Budi said we don't want people to get complacent thinking that there are drugs for COVID-19, and that they go out to places not wearing a mask. He said that the government is anticipating a possible surge in Omicron variants at the end of next month. That's the end of January. That's the end of this month. What? Time. Time. So he said that the government is anticipating a possible surge in the Omicron cases at the end of the month. That could live to an intense but short-waved surge. Pagbudi said, we're more prepared if the next wave really comes. He said we have lots of medication, hospital beds, a high vaccination rate, and medical oxygen. And I talked about that in the last video. And Pagbudi also warned about the noticeable spike in Indonesians traveling overseas for the holiday. And he appealed once again to people to cancel their trips if they don't need to, because the Omicron variant, even though it may be less severe and less deadly than the Delta variant, is much more transmissible. And most of Indonesia's cases so far have been through people coming into the country, so they've been imported. Now, by the time I upload this on Sunday afternoon, the situation could change because of the rapidity with which Omicron spreads. And our numbers are still good, and, well, that's being shown in behavior. So according to Google's COVID-19 Community Mobility Report, more people are going to restaurants and shopping malls compared to before the pandemic. Wow, okay, so people are out. And as I've talked about before, the government is trying to balance this situation between taking care of the economy and taking care of health, and keeping the borders open, keeping the borders closed. How much restrictions? So there's a lot of stuff going on here. Pagbudi noted that there's a surge in infections usually after holiday breaks, including the Hari Raya holiday in May, when millions of people ignored travel warnings and traveled anyway, and the numbers shot way up. So let's hope that we do not see that in the next week or two. And more on vaccines and vaccinations. A lot of vaccine stuff today. Indonesia's COVID-19 vaccine stocks sufficient for the next 3 months, according to the Indonesian Foreign Affairs Minister, Retno Marsudi. He said Indonesia has more than 100 million doses of the vaccine, and that's sufficient for the next 3 months. Did I say he? The minister is a she. She said Indonesia is fortunate because it could procure vaccines both commercially and free from the COVAX facility and friendly countries. And she said, we can do vaccinations well here. She explained that vaccinations and vaccines are two different things, and this is an important distinction. She said in a number of countries, especially developing countries and in less developed nations, the vaccine is available, but they face difficulties in carrying out vaccinations as it's related to the country's infrastructure and their capacity to do that. And in Indonesia, well, I've talked about for months now about some of the lengths that the government is going through, including chasing fishing boats and setting up vaccination centers out in the sea. So they're doing their job, trying to get people done, but not possible in every country. And so that's a good point that she makes. And Retno said that apart from fighting for itself, Indonesia must also voice equality and access to COVID-19 vaccines for all countries. Okay, so Indonesia is taking its role as the presidency of the G20 seriously, and is using it for some social commentary on pushing for equality in vaccinations and vaccines. And, well, that's a good thing. And what's happening in Thailand? 30% of foreigners cancel visit to Phuket. Okay, so 30% of the international tourists have canceled their stays in Phuket due to the Omicron variant, and after the government suspended the Test and Go program. This is according to the Phuket Tourism Association. Top 5 countries that are entering Thailand under the Phuket Sandbox scheme: Russia, Germany, Britain, Sweden, and France. No Asian countries, and, well, not the US or Australia. And the Phuket Association estimates that the New Year holidays will see an occupancy rate of around 70%. Not good that they had the 30% cancellations, but certainly understandable. And, well, 70%, we'd love to get 70% here. And some local news on Bulalang and Singaraja. Hundreds of people visit Bung Karno's green open space every day. And so this was officially opened to the public on December 19th. I haven't been there yet. Bung Karno's green open space, which is also usually referred to as RTH in these articles, the green open space, has now become a tourist destination for the people of Bulalang. And according to this article, it says it seems that the community is very enthusiastic about the opening of the green open space, which has a history of the proclamation of independence by Bung Karno, Indonesia's first president. According to Made Adiana, the organizer of the Tusi arrangement and management of the green open space in Singaraja urban areas, approximately 600 to 700 visitors a day visit the park. He explained that the peak times to visit are afternoons and evenings because there's a dancing fountain spot decorated with attractive lights. That has become a photo op. Okay, a photo op. And in addition to the cool dancing lights and fountains, there's a lion statue and a metal statue of Bung Karno. And according to Pak Made, we're still preparing the SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. Hopefully we can provide information about the flow and procedures in applying for the use of the park to display artistic creations and art performances, and so there will be synergy with the Cultural Service. And in participating in protecting the green open space, this party has posted warnings at several points urging the public not to damage the area and follow rules and continue implementing the health procedures. Okay, if you're in Bulalang, you want to go there. If you've been there already, let me know, leave a comment. Another windy day, of course, and what do we have? Let's take a look at what's happening with some foreigners in Bali. Suspected of depression, Ukrainian Caucasian rage against villa in Ubud. And so there was a Ukrainian tourist, foreigner, I don't know exactly what his visa status is, but he damaged some property in a villa in Ubud on Jalan Sweta. And when I say he damaged some property, it says here he broke some glass and damaged some flower pots. Doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world, but definitely if it's your villa, you don't want that happening. And so the owner of the villa reported him to the police because, well, he was disturbing other guests there. And Satpol PP came out along with military police in Pachalang. Well, so there was a lot of people there. They got to the villa and they couldn't get in because, well, he'd locked the front door. And so they climbed over the wall. Yes, they really wanted to get in. They climbed over the wall, at which point he left and was confronted by other military and police authorities waiting outside. And when he saw he was about to be arrested, it says in here he was going to rebel. And so I take it he was going to take off. He put up a fuss. But it said, according to one of the officials, after we persuaded him, he can be secured, and we took him to the mental hospital in Bangli. Now, if you've been here a long time, you know Bangli was a kind of a running joke when I first got here. If you were acting crazy, off to Bangli with you. Well, that's the place you don't want to end up at. And so he's in Bangli being checked, and according to a spokesperson, they suspect that he was running out of money and unable to pay his bills, and he couldn't return to his country, and so he flipped out. And they are going to coordinate with his embassy in order to take care of the situation. So all is not good in paradise. If you don't have any money, for one thing, that can be a big stressor, especially these days. So if you're going to come here now, and why did I put this story in today? Because if you're going to come here now, you have to realize that you may get locked in here. This has happened before. There's no telling what's going to go on with the Omicron variant. Well, the government could just shut things down, or your country could just shut things down. And so you need to have some way to support yourself. So if you're going to come here, make sure you've got some money, some kind of income. And hopefully this poor fellow will get the help that he needs so he can go home. And more on Bali, and this is not good news. Methamphetamine and Ecstasy factory in Denpasar City police arrest. Bali. The good news is the cops busted this guy. The bad news is that there's a meth factory going on here, meth and ecstasy factory. So there was a raid on the factory. Police confiscated 286 ecstasy pills and 106.92 grams of crystal meth made by a 49-year-old man who was living in calls it a luxury housing estate in Denpasar. And the police received information about a drug deal going on, and so during their investigation they found that the suspected perpetrator was riding a motorcycle against the direction of a bus stop. Everybody rides against directions here. Well, they gave a short chase, but they got him, and just as he was about to be arrested, he tried to throw away some ecstasy pills that he had on him. I guess they saw him do that, so it's kind of stupid. And during interrogation, the perpetrator admitted he'd been producing methamphetamine for more than 3 months. The homemade ecstasy and methamphetamine is produced in one of the special rooms in his house. And the deputy chief of police said that within the year, his parties managed to uncover 717 cases of narcotics abuse in Bali. Although still very high, this figure is recognized to have decreased by 58 cases, or around 7.48% from similar cases in the previous year. And for the year, the police have secured 7,813 kilograms of crystal meth, 3,620 ecstasy pills, and 28,434 kilograms of marijuana, and 19 marijuana plants. Okay, and everybody knows drugs are illegal here, and if you're using them, regardless of how you feel about them, don't do it in Bali. It's not worth it. And another story here on Bulalang, and this is not a happy one again. And well, it's a warning about traffic. And if you saw my last video on Singaraja Snippets about walking down Jalan Nur Rai, I was talking about the traffic and how dangerous it can be here. Well, after delivering ceremony materials, IRT becomes a hit and run victim. And so on Jalan Meyer Metra, a motorcyclist, and there was another person on the back, they were hit by a speeding car who was overcoming them, got too close to them, hit the motorcycles, sideswiped it, and continued speeding on. The motorcycle, of course, crashed. Both people were injured. One injured sufficiently enough that he died. And the police are still looking for the culprit. If you're walking, if you're driving, be careful, because you've got to be defensive here. You've got to be defensive walking. You've got to be defensive driving. Time for a wrap up and update. And let's start first with the Omicron variant and what's happening in the U.S. There's a lot of stuff going around the world. I'm going to take the U.S. because I just saw this. This is from CNN. So they're having an unprecedented spread in the U.S. According to Dr. Megan Rainey from Brown University School of Public Health, what I'm worried about over the next month or so is that our economy is going to shut down. Not because of policies from the government, but rather because so many of us are ill. That's how bad it's getting. And the U.S. broke records for new cases 4 times last week. And the all-time 7-day average high, 386,000. 386,000. And in New York City, the MTA, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, is having problems with staffing issues because so many people are sick, and so they've had to shut down service for 3 lines. In New York, hospitalizations up, and 7-day positivity rate in New York, 19.79%. And healthcare services are being pushed to the edge again. In Ohio, the governor announced the deployment of about 1,250 National Guard members as hospitals struggle with staffing shortages. And the mayor of Cincinnati's declared a state of emergency because of staffing shortages. And I can go on. Flights are being canceled. What's the point here? The point is that regardless of the severity of the Omicron variant, people are getting sick, and there are hospitalizations, especially with the unvaccinated, but also with people that don't have a booster. We could run into the same situation here in Indonesia. Now, we do have something going for us that the U.S. doesn't, and that we're an archipelago, and so there's islands are spread out all over. But once the Omicron variant gets into a place, let's say some remote place like Bandanera, the Malukus, West Papua, where there's minimal health care. Wow, it could be intense. What does this say for us in Indonesia? I don't think we're going to see the 10-day quarantine end soon. I'm going to put my glasses on here. The sun, even though it is completely overcast, the sun is so intense here. Okay, oh, that's much better. Don't see anything. Got to take into consideration the G20, the presidency of the G20, and having the G20 here, I think, is going to be a major factor in what goes on over the next 10 months of the new year. And so I don't see the 10-day quarantine being reduced. If Omicron starts to spread here rapidly, right now we're 136 cases, is not bad. But how quickly is it going to spread? Is it going to get out of control here? If it does, quarantine will go up to 14 days, very likely. Is it going to go down soon? So no. If you're planning on coming in directly to Bali under that scheme that has been in place since October 14th, I don't see that happening anytime soon either. I don't see a VOA happening anytime soon. I don't see a lot of airlines planning on flying into Bali anytime soon. So if you're planning on coming here, what is the way to come here? As I've said many times, the B211, you can fly in business. You have to be sponsored by an agent. And you can fly into Jakarta, you do your 10 days, and then you can come to Bali, and you're pretty free. Well, you're real free in Bali. I was surprised when I was looking at videos the last couple of days of the happenings on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The number of people wandering around, just foreigners and Indonesians, maskless right in front of cops and personnel out to keep the peace and keep order and keep people from gathering. Didn't say a thing. So that's implementation. Okay. And there was a story about 17,000 people going to the zoo on New Year's Day yesterday. Well, the article said, yeah, it's under the 50%. 17,000 people. So we're pretty lax here, and I get it. I really would like to get out, walk around the city without a mask on. I'd like to see all of this stuff come to an end, but right now I don't see it happening. The G20 is going to be the dominant thing here. What about schools? They're scheduled to open, or my granddaughter's is anyway, on Tuesday. Are they going to go back to a full schedule? Not at this point, as far as I know. Anywhere else in the island, I don't know that either. But I imagine all the schools will be open on Tuesday, short of some catastrophe happening in the next 48 hours. Are they going to open full time? Doesn't look like it at this point, but hard to tell too. Crystal ball again, getting nothing here. Air travel, yeah, in the U.S., thousands of flights canceled. I think we're going to see a lot of international flights canceled as well, just as people get sick and the Omicron spreads. If you found this video helpful, useful, or amusing, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Thanks for viewing. I hope you have a really good, happy New Year, and along with everybody else in the world, that we see a better 2022. Thanks for viewing. Be kind to someone today. Stay safe, and I will see you on Wednesday.